Good morning. I'm very pleased to report that the airline industry remains strong and relevant. Traveller numbers will soon top 5 billion annually, and the 69 million tonnes of air cargo transported annually accounts for a third of global trade by value. In 2025, airlines will make a $36 billion profit on revenues of $979 billion. Now, while those numbers are big, let's remember that this equates to a net margin of a mere 3.7%, or $7.20 net profit per passenger. Our profitability is not commensurate to the enormous value that we create at the heart of a value chain supporting 3.9% of global GDP and providing and supporting jobs for 86.5 million people. Now, while airline margins are half what most other industries earn, including those in the air transport value chain, airline resilience is the stuff of legend, as proven in our post-COVID bounce back. The pioneers who founded our association 80 years ago would be proud. Their aim for IATA was to promote safe, regular, and economical air transport for the benefit of the peoples of the world. And looking at aviation today, we have delivered. Flying is safe, and more people and businesses than ever are benefiting from it. Now, this matters because, like all forms of connectivity, flying makes the world more prosperous, and that stands in contrast to isolationism, trade barriers, and the fragmentation of the multilateral rule-based system. These destroy wealth and lower living standards. For the times we live in, this is an important message. Working together, IATA supports aviation benefits through the establishment of global standards, convening power and advocacy to solve problems, providing services to support efficient operations, and data to underpin critical decisions. Our association has a footprint that covers everything from airport codes, safety audits, slot rules, to e-tickets, industry, data, distribution, and future sustainability. And I'm pleased to report that IATA is growing even stronger, with membership topping 350 airlines. And let's take a moment to recognize the 31 airlines who joined IATA since our last AGM, and you can see their logos on the screen behind me. Now, among these, I'd like to make a special mention of Southwest, an originator of the low-fare airline model. It is continuing proof that IATA's work to represent, lead, and serve airlines cuts across the diversity of airline business models. Now, with growing membership and a strong mission, I am convinced that IATA's best days are still in our future. And to give that future focus, we ask travellers what challenges they see as priorities. Their top three are for flying to be even safer, more affordable, and sustainable. And this matches closely the agenda that you, our members, have set for IATA. So let's begin with safety. It is so core to our industry that the IATA Operational Safety Audit, IOSA, is a condition of membership of IATA, with over 100 non-members also on the registry. Moreover, aviation has long been the safest form of long-distance transport. Now, in 2024, there were 7 fatal accidents among 40.6 million flights and 244 fatalities among 4.8 billion passengers. Our aim, however, remains a future of 0 accidents and 0 fatalities, and data is critical to achieving that. Now, whether it's safety data from IATA's Global Aviation Data Management, GADM, or Turbulence Aware, our flagship IOSA and ISAGO audit programs, data helps us to see safety insights that would otherwise be invisible. And that is why growing GADM is a top priority. In 2024, GADM collected data covering over 8 million flights, 50,000 incidents, and $11 billion of maintenance costs. As artificial intelligence capabilities grow, each new data point carries even more potential to make flying safer. But there are 2 areas where government inaction is holding us back. Firstly, less than half of the accident investigations over the last 6 years have published a final report. And unfortunately, that's little improved since we highlighted this last year. Missing insights from accident reports are lost safety opportunities. I'm sorry to say that this dereliction of duty by governments, as outlined in the Chicago Convention, must be addressed as a priority at the ICAO Assembly later this year. The second is the effective sharing of information to keep civil aircraft safe and secure as conflict zones proliferate. In the last 12 months, 2 civil aircraft were downed in conflict zones. Several airports with civilian aircraft on the ground were bombed in military operations, and incidents of interference with navigation systems near conflicts rose sharply. As conflict zones proliferate, we highlighted to the UN Security Council the responsibility of governments to ensure that civil aviation is never the target of military operations, even inadvertently. The most effective way to do that is by sharing information, and the imminent adoption of security management systems into the Chicago Convention Annex 17 adds strength to this objection. It's a timely action, particularly as the ICAO Council recently pointed out the Russian Federation's involvement in the 2014 downing of MH17. Alongside safer flying, travelers want greater affordability. And despite ever-increasing costs and tax challenges, the real cost of flying is 40% less than a decade ago. You are doing an amazing job. And the competitive market forces will continue that trend, provided we have sufficient capacity to meet demand, regulations that create value, and processes that are efficient. And let's start with 2 dimensions of capacity: the availability of aircraft and of infrastructure. Now, regarding aircraft, the manufacturing sector is failing badly, and everyone in this room feels that frustration. The delivery backlog of 17,000 aircraft implies a 14-year wait between ordering and delivery. The number of deliveries scheduled for 2025 is 26% lower than it was promised a year ago. And shockingly, over 1,100 aircraft under the age of 10 years are in storage. That's 3.8% of the entire fleet, nearly 3 times the pre-pandemic comparison of 1.3%. And the annual fleet replacement rate of 3% is well below the normal 5 to 6%. Now, this hits revenues because some demand goes unmet, and scarcity pushes up maintenance and leasing costs. Now, it's just not acceptable that manufacturers estimate that it could take to the end of this decade to sort this mess out. IATA will help with solutions to bring more transparency and efficiency to the parts market. And to avoid the situation getting worse, we advocate to keep aerospace outside of trade wars. But real solutions must come from the manufacturers. And the only thing I can say is the solution cannot come fast enough. The second aspect of capacity is infrastructure. Infrastructure development can best be addressed by governments, airports, and airlines collaborating to understand the genuine requirements of the industry and to ensure appropriate, cost-effective infrastructure is available for the future. Now, I'm pleased to say there have been some positive developments. Our host country, India, is opening new secondary airports in Delhi and Mumbai to cope with the demand. Vietnam aims to have an airport within 100 kilometers of 97% of its population, and Morocco is doubling its airport capacity by 2030. Dubai will begin the phased opening of the world's biggest airport, while Singapore broke ground on a mega terminal to open in the mid-2030s. Latin America's major hubs such as Bogotá, Buenos Aires, Lima, Mexico City, Panama City, and Sao Paulo have either recently opened new facilities or have expansion projects underway. And the US is pursuing a major air traffic management modernization. And in the UK, Heathrow is buying a new backup phone with a loud ringtone for their CEO. Now, governments around the world are building a competitive future for aviation because they want aviation to contribute even more to their societies and economies. Unfortunately, as always, the exception is Europe. The EC's Draghi report brilliantly described how urgent it is for Europe to improve competitiveness. That includes bringing Europe's air transport infrastructure in line with today's needs and readying it for tomorrow's opportunities. Unfortunately, we continue to see more talk than action. And case in point is the decades-old saga of the single European sky. And at stake there is cost, efficiency, safety, and environmental benefits. But narrow national interest appease air traffic controllers at the expense of travellers. And unfortunately, we're likely to see this play out again in a disappointing summer of delays. Worse is the case of the Netherlands, where the government is willfully undermining competitiveness by destroying capacity under the guise of reducing noise. To shrink Schiphol, a feigned balanced approach consultation did not even consider actions by airlines to reduce noise. We must continue to resist this short-sighted madness, lest it inspire copycats. Competitiveness and capacity go together. Good policy stimulate economies and benefit consumers who want more connectivity. And that's a message worth repeating to any government that will listen. And I cannot speak about airport issues without a reference to my old friends at Heathrow. Its seemingly unconstrained ability to collect even more charges with no improvement in performance keeps them firmly on our watch list. And we look forward to good news from the Reimagining Heathrow initiative. And I have to say, when you get British Airways and Virgin Atlantic combining to demand action, you have to take notice. And believe me, I speak from experience. And although I look forward to this initiative, I do think it's going to take more than imagination to solve decades of misguided regulation and mismanagement. Bad regulation can destroy value and stand in the way of affordability. And the litmus test for any regulation is a cost-benefit analysis. As business leaders, we take this much more seriously than regulators. They are not playing with their own money, and the difference between political success and solving a problem is often wide. And that makes bad regulation far too prevalent. Europe again provides an example. It is ground zero of an epidemic of ineffective consumer protection regulation known as EU 261. Under this regulation, whether it's power failures, IT, or air traffic management that fails, when air travel is disrupted, airlines pay for passengers' care and assistance, even though we had nothing to do with the problem. There has been no reduction in delays or cancellations over EU 261's 20-year history. It has had no problem-solving benefit. But there has been a lot of cost, and we currently estimate that to be at about 5 billion euros annually. And it boggles the mind that governments in the US, Canada, and elsewhere are putting EU 261-style approaches into their own passenger rights regulation. At least Australia resisted, concluding that air travellers are aptly covered by its standard consumer protection laws. And hopefully the new US administration and the new Canadian government will come to a similar conclusion. We are less hopeful for the reform in Europe, where a moderately encouraging proposal has been hijacked by politics, just as we saw with the Single European Sky 2 Plus package. And unless transport ministers in Europe show seriousness in tackling Europe's competitiveness crisis, when they meet later on this week, we'll get another grubby political deal that the political and bureaucratic Brussels elite will celebrate, but will do nothing to reduce delays or to make flying more affordable. And the last point on affordability concerns the digitalization of processes to increase efficiency and cut costs. For passenger travel, digital ID is a game changer. Travelers are at ease with digitalized travel processes, and they love being able to skip queues with their smartphone. So you can imagine how they feel when faced with slow-moving immigration queues checking paper documents, particularly as the information has already been digitally provided to the authorities. Using digital ID, travelers could securely walk through airport processes without any identity document checks. It's time to go global with digital ID. That has already been proven at several locations and for specific passenger groups. And that can happen if ICAO and its member states fast-track the completion of the digital travel document standard, and when governments issue digital passport credentials and directly collect data from travellers to issue visas and the OK to travel authorization, and with a global agreement on information exchange so that airlines don't fall afoul of data privacy laws in one country when supplying another with required information on travellers. On the air cargo side, the focus is one record. For too long, aircraft have flown faster than the documentation that accompanies shipments, held back by fragmented systems, outdated processes, and limited data visibility. The current system won't meet anybody's expectation as customs requirements evolve and e-commerce volumes surge. The One Record global data sharing standard will be the single accurate and real-time source of truth for the entire value chain that built it together. The global rollout starts in January 2026, but to gain the full benefits, we'll be counting on two things. The industry stakeholders who built One Record must use it, and governments need to accept One Record data in their facilitation processes. It's time, in this time of growing trade complexity, industry alignment and regulatory support is more crucial than ever. Better compliance, cost savings, and faster processing are substantial incentives for everybody to make One Record work. Now, let's turn our attention to the fundamental challenge of sustainability. In 2021, IATA members agreed to achieve net zero carbon emissions by 2050. And from the outset, we made it clear that it would be challenging and that the airlines could not do this on their own. Governments, manufacturers, infrastructure operators, and fuel suppliers, everybody needed to be equally committed. Now, to be fair, they all supported us with words. By 2022, ICAO member states agreed to net zero by 2050 and confirmed Corry as the sole global market-based measure in support of aviation's decarbonisation. The following year, governments agreed an interim target of 5% emissions reduction by 2030 through SAF on international flights. Now, we did not support this interim target. Our roadmap estimates that SAF will provide 65% of the carbon mitigation needed in 2050, aligned with almost all other decarbonisation roadmaps. IATA's latest study confirms that if we can accelerate the rollout of production technologies, there is more than enough feedstock for the SAF that we need. So while SAF production will double to 2 million tonnes in 2025, it will only meet 0.7% of airlines' fuel needs. So what's gone wrong? Well, despite their enthusiasm, governments did not create the supportive policy framework to meet their 2030 interim target. US tax credits that boosted SAF production are now uncertain. And globally, the companies we need to be major SAF players, such as BP and Shell, have cut back or delayed investment plans. Government support for Corry is weakening, with many governments seeking to milk aviation for more taxes. The abolishing of the aviation tax in Sweden is a rare exception to a trend of governments inventing or hiking aviation taxes that includes the UK, France, Germany, the Netherlands, Gabon, Djibouti, and others. And unfortunately, the EU is unrelenting in its proposals to expand its regional scheme. The EU mandate to mix 2% SAF in the jet fuel supply has succeeded in raising costs, but has done nothing to improve production. It is an outrage that suppliers are charging airlines compliance fees that value SAF at double its market premium over conventional jet fuel. That's a $1 billion windfall for fuel suppliers. This is the EU Great Green Scam. The supply chain issues already discussed are raising fleet ages from 13 to 15 years and slowing progress on improving fuel efficiency. And as we know, Airbus has backed away from commitments to bring a hydrogen aircraft to the market in the medium term. Now, this is not where we should be in 2025. We have a quarter of a century to get to net zero, and there is no time for delay, and there is no tolerance for government greenwashing and unnecessary cost increases. We need urgent actions. CORSIA must be successful. It is a credible and verifiable system that requires carbon credits of only the highest standard, making its positive impact on climate unquestionable. And we're ready to help it succeed with IATA's aviation carbon exchange, permanently open to facilitate transactions. But more governments need to join Guyana, which to date is the only state to certify credits for airlines to purchase. These actions must be accompanied by ringing the alarm bells on SAF production. We need more effective leadership. And for governments, that means delivering policy actions and certainty, preferably production incentives that have a track record of success. Now, other novel policy measures are also welcome as well, provided they are assessed early and abandoned if they do not produce the required results. And meanwhile, companies that can produce SAF must stop procrastinating and get to the work of ramping up production capacity. We're playing our part with the recently launched CADO SAF registry with an associated SAF accounting methodology and the SAF matchmaker. And all of these should boost progress by enabling a global SAF market that credibly traces SAF irrespective of where it's produced, purchased, or used. And lastly, while I've emphasized SAF, where the biggest gains are to be made, we must see action from all other levers of decarbonisation. In particular, ANSPs and airports must deliver greater efficiency, and aircraft and engine manufacturers must make good on the promises to bring greater efficiency and carbon-reducing technologies to the market fast. By the time we meet next year, we must be able to show more progress. And by we, I mean all the aviation industry and governments who are joined in a common commitment of net zero by 2050. I have always been skeptical referring to governments and supply chain participants as partners. But if there is one area where we should share partnership, it's sustainability. Airlines can't make SAF, we can't build aircraft, we can't promulgate government policy or fix air traffic management. Decarbonisation needs true and active participation. I don't know if I'm being cynical for wondering if the other parts of the value chain are only committed to net zero because they see it as an opportunity to generate additional profit. Now, if these comments cause alarm or trigger action, well, that's their intent. Good intentions will not get us to net zero. Action is what we need. Now, fortunately, it's not too late to pick up the pace and to realign us on the path to success. And as I bring my remarks to a close, let's remember all of those who are counting on that success. Our customers have told us they want flying to be even safer, more accessible, and sustainable. Our association's first 8 decades of working together put us on the right path and should give us great confidence for the future. We turn flying from a luxury for a privileged few into a safe global mass transit network serving nearly 5 billion travelers a year. And billions more deserve the prosperity that aviation brings, with the places it makes possible to experience, the jobs it sustains, the trade it supports, and the people it brings together, and the dreams it fulfills. Flying is freedom, and the human spirit thirsts for the exhilaration of the freedom that we bring. Thank you very much.